You just finished lunch. You're completely satisfied. And suddenly, all you want to do is get comfortable. You look at the couch. For some reason, it looks like the best idea you've had all day. So you sit down, and almost immediately, something changes. Your eyes get heavier. Your thoughts slow down. Even your body feels heavier. You know that feeling, the food coma. And if this happens around Thanksgiving, there's usually someone ready with an explanation. The turkey. You've probably heard it before. The turkey made you sleepy. But why? Why would eating a turkey make you want to fall asleep? The usual explanation is tryptophan. Tryptophan is an amino acid your body uses to make serotonin and melatonin, substances involved in regulating sleep. It sounds like the case is closed, except it isn't. Turkey isn't uniquely loaded with tryptophan. Chicken and beef contain it too. And the amount in a normal serving of turkey isn't enough to explain the entire Thanksgiving crash by itself. So if the turkey isn't the whole answer, what is? To find out, scientists have looked at something much smaller than a Thanksgiving dinner, much smaller than you, a microscopic worm. In 2008, Young Jae Yu, Jong Ho Kim, David Risen, and Leon Avery were studying a tiny worm called C. elegans. It has a nervous system simple enough for researchers to examine in extraordinary detail. And when these worms get enough food, something happens. They stop eating, then they stop moving. They enter a quiet, inactive state the researchers called quiescence. And here's the strange part. This response wasn't simply caused by having food in the stomach. It depended on the quality of the food, how much the worms consumed, and signals coming from the intestine. Even this tiny animal was changing its behavior in response to what it had eaten. Now move up a little. Fruit flies. In 2016, Keith Murphy and his colleagues studied what happened to fruit flies after they ate. And the answer became much more specific. The flies didn't simply become sleepy because their stomachs were full. The effect changed with the size of the meal. It also changed depending on what was in it. Protein mattered. Salt mattered. And the researchers found specific neurons involved in the sleep response to protein-rich meals. So the nervous system wasn't simply detecting food. It was responding to information about the meal itself. And now the question gets closer to home. Because your brain has its own system for keeping you awake. They're called orexin neurons. You don't need to remember the name. Just think of them as part of the machinery that helps keep you alert. In 2006, Denis Berdakov and his colleagues found that rising glucose inhibits these wake-promoting neurons. So as your body's energy state changes after eating, one of the systems helping keep you awake is responding to that change. But don't imagine one giant switch being flipped inside your skull. That's not how this works. Orexin is only one part of the system, and that's where the story gets more complicated. Because your gut isn't just sitting there waiting for the food to disappear, it's constantly sending information back to your brain. And in 2025, researchers found a remarkably direct example of this. Kehua Chen and his colleagues studied male mice and found that feeding reduced wakefulness and increased sleep. They also found that activating sensory nerves connected to the stomach and upper intestine produced the same effect. And when they blocked that pathway, the sleep-promoting effect of feeding disappeared. In other words, they could trace a direct route from the gut to the brain that helped push the animals towards sleep. But there's still another piece, because sometimes you get sleepy after lunch, even when you haven't eaten an enormous meal. That's because your body isn't only reacting to the food, it's also reacting to the time of day. Your internal clock changes your alertness throughout the day. And researchers have spent years separating the effects of that clock from the effects of simply being awake. When people are placed on schedules that deliberately separate their sleep from their internal clock, the daily rhythm of alertness doesn't simply disappear. Your body still has its own timing, which means lunch can arrive at a particularly inconvenient moment. Your internal clock may already be pulling your alertness down. Then you eat. Your gut starts sending signals, your metabolism changes, your brain responds. And suddenly, that couch doesn't look quite as optional anymore. Now the pieces start to fit together. The food coma isn't one single mechanism. It's the result of several systems responding to a meal at roughly the same time. And there's evidence that this can affect more than just how awake you feel. In a 2024 study of thousands of adolescents and young adults in India, Researchers found that people tested shortly after eating performed worse on several cognitive tests than people tested later. The difference was especially noticeable on harder questions. So when your brain feels a little slower after lunch, that sensation may reflect a real change in how you're performing, not just how you feel. And now we can finally go back to the turkey. Yes, turkey contains tryptophan. And yes, tryptophan is involved in the chemistry your body uses to regulate sleep. But turkey isn't a sleeping pill hiding on your Thanksgiving plate. The turkey gets blamed because it's there when the crime happens. But the real suspect list is much longer. How much you ate, what your gut is signaling, what your brain's wakefulness systems are doing, and what time of day it is. Thanksgiving just happens to combine several of those things at once. A huge meal, a complicated mix of foods, and a time of day when your alertness may already be changing. So the next time you finish a big meal and feel yourself slowing down, don't assume you've suddenly become lazy. Your gut is talking to your brain, your metabolism is changing, your wakefulness systems are responding, and your internal clock may already be pulling in the same direction. You didn't suddenly lose your discipline, you just ate. And for a little while, your entire body is changing gears.
Hey, hey, hey!